You're listening to the Talking Shit About Getting Rich podcast with expert shit talker, Coach Roel.
What's up, Kurt? How are you?
Doing very well. It's actually cold, and I know you're in Florida where it's nice and warm, but other than that, doing well.
Got my Florida shirt on with the palm trees, my wife's least favorite shirt, which by default makes it my favorite shirt.
And I have a hoodie on because it's cold.
Where are you right now?
Right now, I'm in my home office in Milton, Ontario, so just outside of Toronto. And you're in sunny Florida enjoying palm trees. I see them in the background waving away.
Yeah. It's good here. It's nice. I know you've been here a few times. So I wanted to ask you, let's get straight to the point here. Why yet another podcast about money? Before you jump into that, actually, funny side story. Did you know how Yahoo got its name?
No. Were they really excited when they start the business?
It's an acronym for yet another hierarchical oracle orifice.
Wow.
Nerd alert.
Wow. You took some time to study that one.
No, I did not. It's just something that stuck for some reason. That's how the founders named it. They're like, what are we going to call this thing? This is, way back in the early days of the interwebs. They said, well, it's yet another hierarchical oracle orifice. Yahoo. How nerdy is that? But anyways.
Ingenious, but yes. So to answer your question, I want to ask you the same one. So I'll give you my answer first. I think another podcast on making money in finance, because there's still a lot of people out there that despite, all the other podcasts, YouTube channels, books, blogs, articles, not everybody is in a place where they are on the journey to achieving whatever financial goals they have. Whether that be learning how to save better, invest better, build businesses, start a business. So I don't think there will ever be enough. And this education that, we provide, that others provide, is not something that you learn in school. And I had a good conversation with a friend of mine that I've known since university, who's an entrepreneur. And, he said he probably wouldn't have started his journey as an entrepreneur unless his dad was an entrepreneur himself. So I think that's why. Yet another podcast and making money. What do you think? Why do we need another one of these?
What's the acronym for that? Just curious. Yet another podcast about making money. YAPAMM.
YAPAMM. We'll
Yet
give
another
that
podcast about making money.
We'll give that to somebody in marketing and they can figure that out.
Yeah. But for my take on it, I don't know if I really, because our working title, which may change in the future, may not, is talking shit about getting rich, right? That's the inspirational working title, at least for now. But getting rich doesn't necessarily mean money, right?
No, it doesn't. So what does rich mean to you?
It's freedom of choice. Oh gosh, that's a deep question, man. It's freedom of choice. Like, I don't want to necessarily launch into my tirade, but I will if you egg me on.
Go for it.
It's freedom of mobility, freedom of financial freedom, monetary freedom, and then time freedom to be able to choose what you do with time. I think those are the three main things for me. I sometimes like to call it the three currencies of wealth. Mm-hmm. Time freedom, monetary freedom, and mobility freedom. So the time to do what you want whenever you want and spend the time with whoever you want. Mobility is to be anywhere where you want, to be able to generate income and support yourself and your loved ones from anywhere in the world. So mobility freedom. And then what was the other one? Monetary freedom is to be able to not necessarily have to look at the price of the menu when you're at a restaurant, right? And you have a lot of different restaurants, whether it's a fast food restaurant, don't have to worry about the prices, or if it's a fine dining and you're like, I just want to order what I want to order. So that to me is like monetary freedom. So getting rich is not just money. I think it's kind of a layered approach. And for me to answer that question, why yet another podcast about making money? It's kind of I'm gonna take kind of the coward's way out and sidestep the question. It's not necessarily about making money, but that is a large part of it. That's kind of where it started for me. And why? For me, selfishly, quite straightforward, is I like this idea of having a little corner of the interwebs to be able to speak freely with you, this bromance that we have.
This bromance that's been going on for years.
Yeah. Because how would you tell the fine people out there in the internet world where this banter started between you and me?
So, well, go back a little bit further. So we met when I was working for, a company up here in Canada that taught people how to invest in real estate in financial markets. And you somehow wandered in, you saw some ads, you wandered into a ballroom, and ended up buying courses. And so you were a student. So I don't think we really connected through that way. But I think it was after you had finished and you guys started investing in real estate. And I think it was later on you started trading, but you started investing in real estate, and I'll let you tell your full story at some point. But then you reached out to say, hey, is there anything I can do to help? And I'm like, who's this guy calling me? Like, he's a student. I didn't know really who you were. And, you told me about your background as a CPA and that you took the courses, you're investing in real estate, you're able to, leave your job. I'm like, sure. I'm a big believer in, it's about the people. It's not necessarily their background. Like, you didn't have direct experience in what we did, but you had a passion of helping people, serving people, and building businesses. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that's how we met. And then the bromance part of it started after we both had left that company. And I can't remember, it was last year or the year before. Was it 2 years? Are we going on 2 years doing this?
I think it's closer to 2 years, man.
Yeah, where we just decided to start doing like kind of coaching, mentorship, and just bouncing ideas off of each other on different business investment ideas, sometimes on life. And it's been awesome.
Great. I'm glad you feel that. Well, at least one of us likes it.
and to go back to your point about, Rich, I know a few people, I've heard this a couple of times, but it's like having the ability to do what you want, when you want, where you want, with who you want, without getting arrested.
Without getting arrested, yes.
Without getting
that's
arrested.
Implied.
Yeah, because if you get arrested, then you can't really do any of that stuff. So yeah.
Then you don't have the mobility freedom.
Exactly. You have tons of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it.
That's why I think it's really like a threefold thing. But at any rate, yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So since that, we're starting this journey, and you have this idea of actually turning what we've been doing for the past couple of years into something. Now, I remember you sent me the WhatsApp message like, hey, I have this genius idea, and you made me wait until we spoke to tell me. What was your thought process that got you to saying, okay, hey, let's do this. Let's have a podcast.
Well, I like to call what our meetings were for the past, I think it was now early 2021 when we first started bouncing ideas off of each other, like buddy coaching. Like I've heard of that many times before, where you choose a buddy and you just bounce ideas off each other. You take turns coaching each other. So you and I had started that almost 2 years ago now. And then every so often, as you'll recall, I would comment saying, like, this is the kind of stuff, this is the kind of shit that I wish other people could hear. And like sometimes we would get into stuff that's like really cool and really interesting perspectives. And then we'd both be agreeing, like, I wish people just knew this about this. And that would help people so much. And then, so 2 years later, that's when recently I thought, well, how about we just flip record on our Zoom meetings? Because for some context, for people out there listening or watching, we would usually meet over Zoom. because it was over the pandemic, I remember that was your insistence that we need face-to-face interaction, even if it's virtually, as much as possible. Because this was early 2021. So we're like pretty much still in the middle of the pandemic. Oh, yeah. And I know you were feeling it. I was feeling it as well, just feeling cabin fever and cooped up. So it's like, let's have some human interaction somehow. And the conversations we had is like, geez, I just wish we could record this. This is gold. And then 2 days later, I forgot what exactly it was.
Yeah, and I think because we started this, I think at some point you had like the full-on beard or something was going on. Just weren't seeing people.
Not the nice fade, nice tight with behind the ears like I have today.
No, very different. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting time, and I think it helped. Like, we can talk more about your business and, your growth since that period of time. And, I think a lot of people out there, a lot of entrepreneurs started businesses during COVID because they, were forced to. You're in a different position where you weren't forced to because you're already living, a lot of that life. Like you moved down to Florida, you had your real estate investing business, then you bought the cabinet businesses, and so you're already doing that. We're an entrepreneur, but then you decided to take another pivot because I think you saw an opportunity to, really help people.
Yes. And kind of selfishly, I thought, in a nutshell, the perspective was, we're fortunate. My wife and I we're fortunate that during the pandemic down here in Orlando, there was a bit of a lull in our kitchen remodeling business. There was a period of 1 week when it was declared that we were officially in a pandemic in 2020, March of 2020, that all of our short-term rental vacation properties, we were booked solid because spring is like our high season. And then when they declared a pandemic in March of 2020, our inboxes were flooded with all these automated notices that cancellation. So yeah, we were freaking out for a little bit. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And so there was a little bit of a period where there was a lull while the world was figuring out what to do with this. But then interestingly enough, there was a lot of traffic because here in Florida, whether you like it or not, the governor kept the economy pretty open. And even though there were some regulations, restrictions, we found that people were taking the time to remodel their home because they couldn't travel, they couldn't spend on nights out, restaurants, entertainment stuff. So they're like, well, if I'm stuck at home anyways, might as well make this more comfortable. So our kitchen business actually was thriving for much of the pandemic. But yet I was still stuck at home, homeschooling the kids, going crazy with that and, that sort of thing. But fortunately, we had one of our businesses that was actually doing well that kept us going. Mm-hmm. Towards the early part of 2021, then, that's when I thought, we are fortunate. And there's a lot that I've learned since coming down here, having invested in real estate, relocated from Toronto to Orlando, acquiring another traditional business, and then being where we were, all the while raising two young children under the ages of 5, that I thought, hey, how about that other dream of mine? One of the passions that you and I talk about was this Coach Roel thing, and how I can share what I've learned, both through formal education, through the company where you and I had met, and then also through my own just real life trial and error. This is the best time because honestly, I don't need the money. That was the key. So that's how I convinced my wife to be on board. It's like, would you rather I start a new venture when we're hurting for money, or right now when we don't really need to, and I can truly be present and be like, here's what I can help with. Mm-hmm. And so obviously that's what I started off with, the latter. It's like, this is the ideal time for us, at least, to launch yet another venture.
And so your venture obviously is focused on, short-term rental and teaching, Canadians how to become snowbirds and buy property
sustainably.
Now, just talking about sustainably, like we're in a very interesting time right now when it comes to investing or buying real estate. Like interest rates in Canada are, continuing going up. They just increased the rate recently, probably going to be 1 or 2 in 2023. What about the US market and interest rates? What have you seen down there?
Well, I believe actually today and tomorrow, or yesterday and today, was actually they're having the Fed fund meeting rates, whatever that's called, FOMC,
Yeah.
federal. So, they just, much like Canada, they've been increasing rates regularly. And long and short of it is, yes, I do expect a slowdown in the economy in general. For real estate, especially, specifically in Florida, because that's what matters to me and my family, is I'm kind of looking forward to the slowdown. Actually, I did a webinar just earlier. We were just talking just before we hit record. I did a webinar just prior to this. Somebody asked the same question. Do you expect a downturn considering interest rates? Mm-hmm. And the short answer was yes. Thank you. Next question. But I was just joking. But yes. And in short, I'm looking forward to it. And, the students in our little Snowbird Investor Club are also looking forward to it, because as investors, we're looking to buy at a discount.
Yep.
Right. So as long as you have the right mentality going into this, you never want to say for sure what's going to happen in the future, but I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that we are already in the midst of a recession, and it's just going to slow down even more. We're going to get deeper into a recession or continue the same recession over the next 12 months. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. Not to wish any ill on anybody else, but this is like our Christmas time in a sense. Like, we can go, as investors, we can go shopping and pick up properties. But from where you are all the way up north, can you hear me out there? From the North Pole.
I can.
From your igloo. How do things look like from your igloo, Kurt?
From my igloo.
North of the border.
From my igloo. It's looking pretty good. No, it has been interesting this year. This year we started off having several properties under contract earlier. One was a commercial mall. We had additional units out east, and we had to step away for, other reasons, outside of interest rates. But even when I was revisiting the deals, as we started to see rates go up, deals that looked amazing in February started not looking so good, even come like May and June. And I think one thing I'm seeing now is starting to look for larger, multifamily and commercial deals. Sellers still feel that, we're back in a low interest rate environment where they are asking a ridiculous amount for properties that, they cash flow if you're paying 2 to 3%, interest rate. But, as investors, obviously we're looking at it from being conservative. We know rates are going to go up. If we're looking at variable, that's going to fluctuate and continue to climb up. But right now, even if you get something at like 6 to 7%, which is aggressive, I think if you're doing an analysis, what people are asking for properties just doesn't cash flow. Like I had somebody, I was looking for a deal, and I was actually on a Facebook marketplace, and the person responded and said, I want to sell. I have 6 units, in a market I'm familiar with, and 1.1 million. So I'm like, okay, semi-income expenses. I already know it's not going to cash flow. So I'm like, semi-income expenses. So he does. And I do my analysis, and I emailed back and I provided him kind of a breakdown of my analysis and said, it's not worth 1.1. I don't care what your realtor says. I don't care what you want, because you have a rate of maybe 2 to 3%. Yeah, you're cash flowing, but there's no way any investor is going to cash flow at 1.1. So the reality is he's asking 1.1, and it would probably have to come in at about 700,000.
Wow.
Huge difference. So all the gains that people saw and investors saw throughout the past couple of years are really being eaten away by this interest rate environment.
Mm-hmm. So how long do you think that's going to last, where there's that big disconnect? Like that's what, 30, almost 35% gap between what he's asking or she's asking and what will cash flow in real life?
Yeah, I think it's that dance is going to be, it's going to go on for a while. It's like, you go to a club, right? And, when we were younger, we used to go to the club and you see this
I like where this is going.
really hot girl in the club. And, you approach her early in the night, so it's early. She's like, okay, I have my options. Roel, you're not the one for me. Not right now, not at 9 p.m.
I see where this is going.
So the night goes on and on and on. You guys are having fun. People are starting to leave the club. It's 2 a.m. At 9 p.m., the person selling, in this case, was the woman across the room or at the bar, didn't like your offer. But as time goes on, your offer hasn't changed. But now she starts to see the reality of this is a really good option or a really good offer. So hopefully sometime next year, sellers start to have the same realization that it's 2 a.m. There's nobody else around. Yes, your offer is good. So as buyers right now, we're being patient. We're putting it in the hands of the seller saying, this is my number. We know that a lot of other investors are going to come with the same analysis and not put an offer in. So creating those relationships and putting numbers out there, people will start calling back or put on your calendar, hey, let me check back in a month or 2 months and see if the seller is now ready.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a follow-up plan for these sellers that have turned you down?
It depends on the opportunity, depends on how that you get turned down. So if we want to go back to the bar analogy, if you go to the girl at 9 p.m. and you ask for a phone number and she throws a drink in your face, you're probably not going to go back later that day. If she kindly says, I appreciate it, but no, not right now, for sure, you're looking at your watch and you're saying, okay, I need to go back. So same thing with sellers. So if you get a small no, schedule something for maybe a month, 2 months out, depending on what you're working on, depending on the size of the deal, and just reach back out.
Very good point. Very good point. And you just kind of hope from afar, I see you.
Yep.
I see you, red skirt.
Yep.
And hopefully that person's still there later on and you can try to, do I look good now? Have you had enough drinks in your system?
And the ugly lights come on and then it's too late. So you have to get in before the ugly lights come on. But yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, it's totally another tangent. But that's a really, really good point. So in the meantime, what would you suggest, or what are you seeing people, other commercial multifamily real estate investors doing to kind of bide their time between now as you're waiting for the clock to run out? You're waiting for the motivation to build.
Finding more off-market deals, connecting with wholesalers, talking to your realtor, trying to get off market, just putting yourself out there, social media. And also it's allowing investors to submit more creative offers. So now vendor take back, seller financing, when you explain it to them, say, listen, not only, is this going to get you closer to that price that you want over time, but it's also going to defer your taxes up to 5 years, at least in Canada. So you can structure it as a win-win, where before in like February, you approach a seller with, hey, I want to buy your property 20% below or more what you're asking, and I want you to hold financing. They would laugh at you. They would throw that drink in your face. Now you can put that offer out there and they're looking around like, well, there's nothing else on the table right now. Maybe we can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. But see, that's really cool. Like the seller financing, vendor take back, what is it? I don't know. I forget what the French Canadian version of that is, but basically seller French financing. Yeah. No, I don't. I was just remembering what, our friend Ben, he would, there's a cool French term for the same thing. But basically seller financing, vendor take back. If you do the numbers in a perfect world, let's say the seller does not have any mortgage on it, just to keep the math kind of simple. And they have a property that they're asking $1 million for. You feel it would only really cash flow at $700,000. This is kind of on both sides for the seller and the buyer. If they can understand this concept a lot more happy deals can be done where both parties are satisfied when they walk away from it. So again, $1 million property, no mortgage on it, just to keep the math simple. If the seller would just say, you know what, we don't need a bank. I'm okay to do a deal directly with you as the buyer. You just pay me in installments. Pay me $1.2 million in installments over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Then the buyer could just not even have to come to the table with the full $1 million. They technically can offer over asking, sometimes a lot over asking. It's just that the seller just needs to wait over time to get that stream of income. Like, I mean, when I learned that, I was like, my mind was blown. It's like, why don't people know about this? Could you expand a little bit more on how that works better than I did?
Well, you're absolutely right. Like, and for a buyer standpoint, it gives you time. So if you're buying a property that is distressed, if you're buying a property that, you know, has under market rents, and you're not in a state or province where you can just, you know, give 30, 60 days notice to a tenant and they're out, then it gives you time to actually get tenants in, get market rents up, do whatever renovations you need to basically improve the value of the asset. Then you can go to a traditional lender and then refinance. And if the seller is giving you, let's say, 5 years on a vendor take back, that allows the interest rate environment that we're in probably to cool off a bit. Like, I don't see interest rates just continuing to go up and up and up. We're in like the 15 to 20% range, which we were, you know, decades ago. A lot of people I talk to feel that we're probably going to get to an environment where 6% is kind of the norm. So obviously we're not there right now, at least in Canada, 6% kind of the norm. So when we get to something that's stable, you can then go refinance after you've improved your cash flow in the property, so overall revenue of the property, get your money out, pay off the seller as long as you refinance it for a good enough amount. And now you have a property where you're still no money in, that's cash flowing. So it's a strategy that definitely works, that, you know, people have to learn the intricacies of, and not only learn themselves, but how to explain the benefits to a seller. And I think when we look at 2023, and I want to ask you this question, like, you know, with the interest rate environment that we have right now, what do you see? Like, what's your outlook for next year? Because that's huge. Like, we're in December, and people that are trying to plan, hey, these are my goals for next year as an investor, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Like, what do you see happening next year?
Well, in my crystal ball, it says that we're going to continue to get more of the same in terms of a slower economy. Mm-hmm. I do think we have not seen the worst of the recession yet. That is a relative term. So is a recession bad? There's a common saying that more millionaires are created during recessions than in times of prosperity. Mm-hmm. So when I heard that, like, I don't know how many decades ago, because I'm only 29 right now, but I always thought that's fascinating. Like, how, when I was a financial advisor, and correction, I'm not a CPA. I caught that. You said CPA. I'm actually a CFP.
Yep.
So a CFP is kind of like a CPA light. Like, CFPs like to think they know a lot, but we don't. So I digress. What was I talking about again? The
crystal ball.
When I heard that saying, I always thought, who are these people that know how to make money during recessionary periods? Like, as a CFP financial advisor, I'm there. Get a job, pay down your debts, save for the long term, live within your means, hold for the long term. Maybe you can retire at age 65. That was my mantra. And I thought I was helping people. But then I saw that saying that more millionaires are made during recessionary periods than times of expansion or prosperity. Like, who's that? And how do they do that? So now I understand, at least in theory, how that is done. And it's basically, in a nutshell, rich people, they buy assets when they're on sale. So during a recession, during a depression, right? Well, where do they get their money from if it's a recessionary period? Well, that's a whole other topic for probably another day, right? Which we'll probably have to revisit over and over again during our episodes. But at any rate, over the next year, now that I'm sort of on this side of the quadrant, referring to the cash flow quadrant, the right side, being a business owner / investor, I'm just kind of chomping at the bit, being like, I'm so excited to pick up some assets that are on sale, like single family homes, small multifamily, even larger. Personally, I'm learning at this point in time how to raise capital in the private equity markets legally, and not just like a handshake deal between two people, but legally registering with the SEC, registering with the securities commissions in Canada as well, and being able to publicly go out there and say, hey, this is for accredited investors only. It can expect returns of north of, double digits kind of thing. So that's what I plan to do to launch, to be able to take advantage of. So my answer to where do you get the money from to buy these assets that are on sale? Well, I'm learning how to pool them together so that we could buy those 50, 100 unit apartment rentals down in Florida.
No, I think that's awesome. And I think one commonality with raising capital, yes, it has to be legal. We don't want to end up in jail. But there is a lot of money out there. There are a lot of people that have owned homes for 5+ years that are sitting in a ton of equity, that have, good paying jobs, that would qualify as accredited investors to invest in, 50, 100 unit multifamily properties, or commercial, like self-storage or shop, whatever the case may be. So that's pretty good. So
don't
what
believe
else?
the hype when the media says, the whole economy is going down the toilet. I know that there are a lot of people, especially who probably are listening to this, would be like, that kind of is too bad. It kind of sucks for the rest of the economy, but we're not doing too bad. And I want to flip that to you as well, because we're kind of close to the end of our time before we do our traditional wrap up. But what's your sort of outlook for 2023?
I think it is. I agree with you. There's going to be a buying opportunity for sure for more sophisticated investors. People who are just buying traditionally with, hey, I'm going to save my money, save 25% to put down on a property, and just traditional financing. They're going to buy properties that aren't going to cash flow. And I think with how we've seen inflation go, it's tougher for people to actually save that 25% from their JOB. And they wouldn't even have to change any of their spending habits over the past few years. It's just inflationary pressure. So eliminating some competition as an investor is not a bad thing, because again, it puts more pressure on the seller to come down, because there is not that, frenzy of buyers at the door with multiple offers and everything like that. So I think that's awesome. As I mentioned before, I do see interest rates kind of leveling off probably towards the, second half of the year, which is going to be great. But I do see people continuing to struggle that are just relying on jobs and not looking for investment opportunities, or looking to start a business or have an idea. So I would encourage anybody to, look at, when we talked about, time freedom is huge. If you have a job, you have no time freedom. You have 40-ish hours a week that you're giving to somebody else. So that's 40 hours a week. Not only are you giving to somebody else, but what are you losing on the back end of that? You're losing time with family, with friends, on your business idea, focus on investing. I think the most important asset is actually learning how to do whatever it is you want to do on the side. So I think for those that are educated, for those that are putting themselves in a position to be ready to take advantage of what we're going to see next year, it's going to be an amazing year. For those that are just, doing the same thing they have been doing, since they left school and, started a job, it's going to be much of the same. And there's going to be even more pressure on them, because I don't see inflation coming down anytime soon, even though with interest rates, what they're trying to do is combat inflation. So I think they're going to struggle more.
Yeah.
So they should listen to this podcast to learn how not to struggle.
Yeah, 100%. Oh gosh, for sure. But as they say, as the closing sentences of Tales from the Riverbank, which I used to watch as a kid. I don't know if you ever watched that, but that's another story. So you have to tune in to the next episode about that. But before we go, we have to fulfill our tradition as to what the heck are we going to call this episode. So let's brainstorm real quick. What do you think it could be?
What are we going to call this episode? I
think YAPAMM could be there.
YAPAMM. I think that's a good one.
We talk a lot about commercial stuff.
Talked about commercial, but I think YAPAMM is more of a, I like that. I like that as the first episode. Let's go with that.
Okay, done. Yet another podcast about making money.
Yep. YAPAMMs. Or is it YAPAMMs? Because there's 2 M's at the end.
I think keep it simple. YAPAMM. YAPAMM. It's cryptic. And so hopefully people will be like, what the heck is that? And I got to click on this and consume this content like it's no tomorrow.
Clickbait. It's awesome.
Good stuff. All right, Curtis.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time, Roel.